Hello, welcome to another episode of the HealthTech Hustle. Today, I'm joined with a very special guest, Mr. Maximilian Winter. He is a venture capitalist investor helping entrepreneurs launch exponential organizations in health and breakthrough technology. He is also the founder and CEO of the Neue Fund, and excited to have him on and just kind of share his journey and his knowledge of this industry. So with that being said, Max, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Rodney.
No problem. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. Why don't you give people a background of who you are and kind of what you are doing in this space?
Yeah, so Neue Fund is um, a small micro fund in venture capital that we started a few years ago, and are about 20 some investments in. We're doing about another 10. We are focused on kind of life sciences, healthcare, and traditionally some other investment fields as well. Personally, I came from Germany, lived half of my life there, um, and have been in the U.S. For 15 years. Um, and my background is mostly in finance. Had a short stint on Wall Street, and then was able to work with entrepreneurs and venture capital.
Awesome. And so what kind of led you to becoming an investor? How did you end up in that role? And how did you end up more specifically in health tech?
Good question. I think um, I thought that this is how I could make the most impact. I think also it wouldn't be a full conversation if I didn't mention that there's a certain amount of privilege. I think that I think anybody can do it, but at the same time, it's easier if you have certain learning experiences, like you have a experience in your on Wall Street and finance and in healthcare, and you understand what are really big problems that are needed to be solved, that are not only impactful for humans but can also unlock a lot of financial viability.
Okay. And so when it comes to health tech, these companies are reaching out to you for your resources, for your knowledge to help them actually grow their company? Or what role do you play in helping health tech companies?
Yeah, sometimes it's either, oftentimes it's both. I think smart founders look beyond just getting funded, and look what other value all the stakeholders, including investors, can add to to their evolution. So that could be anything from product development or business model, strategy, who else they need to hire, key hires, and tools that help them in their operations.
Okay. So is there a specific type of health tech company that you yourself have grown fond of, or you like their business model and you would prefer to work with those types of companies? Has anything really stuck out to you?
Um, Certain types of companies or a certain type of founder. I think our thesis is constantly evolving. It's more around human health, which is really broad. It could be anything from life sciences to healthcare to agricultural applications. And so I think in terms of a project to work on to back is something that is meaningful, something that's really needed in the world, um, instead of maybe another social media platform, or not to degrade those, but I think those are all mostly things that have been done. So I think um, the next wave of companies that are going to unlock a lot of value are in things that are really needed, versus really optional, in my opinion. And then in terms of founders, um, I think humble personality, willing to learn, coachable, um, is really amazing. Someone who's really resourceful as well, so it can do a lot with very few resources, um, and people who are very responsive. So it doesn't take you that long to hear from them, whether it's email or when you contact them. I think those are some of the main things.
Awesome. So people who are ambitious and have those goals set, and really people who are really trying to innovate rather than duplicate in this industry, actually having a vision to create something new rather than just copying someone else. So when it comes to the companies that you want to help, what would you recommend? What stage are they usually at when they're coming to you?
Um, Great question. For us, they generally have some kind of validation, whether that is in the product that they're developing, the service that they intend to deliver, um, or at least like intellectual property, um, and maybe some kind of traction that is that they have customers or patients or some kind of client, um, and then that they have either spend significant time on their business model or roadmap, um, and or have it have a team, or have really good ideas as to what their needs are around their team. This is something that we're willing to help with, but generally in terms of a financing stage, that means that it's in the venture capital lingo is called a Series Seed or Series A. So it's not the idea stage, but it's generally a little bit further along.
Okay, so they're they're a little bit past the inception part of the process, and they're trying to transition into getting it adopted into the market. And so they already have that foundational knowledge, whether it's the strategy, the tools, and the team, but they would approach you to kind of get them over that hump or push them in the right direction and just give them that extra momentum.
Yeah, I think that they still have kinks in their whole process. I think is kind of to be expected. Maybe their team isn't perfectly well rounded yet, either on the science or the business side, or their business model isn't perfectly built out, their roadmap, or you know the partnerships, any of this stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think it's just the technology or the product has to have some kind of validation, um, and so that we can see, okay, well now maybe it's only the risk of manufacturing it or bringing it to the customers, and those are still significant risks, but we think that we can estimate them and handle them a little bit better.
Okay, interesting. And so because they have this foundation, I guess, this framework put together, and they come to you, you guys are able to identify the good, the bad, strengths and weaknesses type of deal and suggest improvements upon that. And so I kind of want to switch gears and talk about the team on your end, as part of your fund, and how you kind of pull those people in together so that they can provide value to the companies who are seeking your help.
Yeah, you mean an everyday workflow or how we came together?
How you guys came together. Just, I know it's more than just you and this company. And so how did you go about finding other like-minded individuals who understand how to provide value to the people who are coming for you for investments, other health tech companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it because you have to source talent that is really versed in multiple fields. In our case, that means you have to have someone who has a deep science background and understanding, that can validate technologies or products. Then you have to have someone who's familiar with the investment process to some extent. So the due diligence and maybe sourcing opportunities and some other things. And I think finally, um, you know, someone who is good in social situations, who ideally has a network and can tie that into the first two skills that they have.
Okay, interesting. So when it comes to your actual fund, are you doing anything to like go out and find like new investment opportunities, or are people mainly coming to you? And what's that relationship?
Yeah, great question. I think it's both. They come to us and we source them actively. I think it's a little bit more of us sourcing actively, but it could be close to half and half. Um, we we source them in different networks. There's accelerators. So these are programs that give really young businesses a structure to for the founder to develop an idea and bring it into certain validations and make it ready for an investment. So we have a pretty broad network of accelerators. It could be something like Y Combinator, um, and then also the less known ones, you know, um, IndieBio, SOSV, and things that are really not on the map, like Bio Generator in St. Louis or Bio Accelerator in in Alabama. Then there's angel groups. So angel investors are people who kind of invest between the idea stage and a little bit further along before institutional venture capital firms come to the table. Um, and they usually are pretty good at sourcing deal flow. And and then there's others, co-investors. I think one of the best sources of opportunities is founders themselves, because they always know the latest and they're quite plugged in.
Like directly to the company founder? Is that what you're talking about?
Um, yeah, I mean, for example, like if we have a network of founders, whether we've invested in them before or not, but we maintain a relationship with them, they'll say, "Hey, I thought this opportunity was really fitting for what you're looking for, and this is a great founder. It's a personal friend of mine," or and then you have this kind of reference. I think that oftentimes helps, but it's not necessary.
Got you. So that's just more like a direct referral type of networking thing. But you mentioned like accelerator, angel investors. And so the role that they play, is that more like the middleman type of deal where these startups or these companies have to be able to get investments from the angel investors or be part of an accelerator for you to actually show them any attention or show any interest, so to say?
No, you don't have to come through one of those necessarily. I think that's what happens most of the time because after that they've had a good amount of feedback and have really refined their thesis and technology to a certain extent. But um, I think there's definitely some founders who are, maybe they're taking it out of the university and they're really fast to learn and um, maybe they have a couple of really great mentors. Maybe you have a great business mentor and you have a great science mentor, um, and then you might not need those steps. You can probably skip them. Although I think it's fair to say for a lot of people, they could really benefit through like a back and forth iterative process with one of these groups, incubator, accelerator, angel group, or any other mentor or university network.
So what's like the main difference between what you do and what like an angel investor or a different accelerator does?
Uh, Another great question. The main difference between us, well, we are like a glorified angel investor, except that we are doing this full time. Most angel investors have a full time job, and they kind of invest on the side in the 10 or 20% of their free time. So they're I think they have natural constraints, and sometimes that means um, they're going to have to rush the due diligence process, and they don't have maybe 150 points on their checklist, or um, any. In terms of the accelerator, I think they're able to. Maybe you should just repeat the question on the accelerator, because I'm not.
So like what would be like the main difference between like the value that you provide to these health tech startups when they're going to the accelerator versus when they're going to you, and what's really the key differences that you provide?
Yeah.
If there is any.
For us, well, I think to some extent they're overlapping. To another extent, they're not. So I think for full transparency, we're still kind of working on operational playbooks and certain things. We talk to accelerators. They say things like, these are scientific companies, and so a lot of scientists come here. They're not entrepreneurs, so they have a whole module of their course, of their program, that focuses on how to make scientists understand entrepreneurship, and then how to become entrepreneurs, so that they can do both, right? Um, and for us, I think we kind of round out that process that they have started, because I think there's always, even after that 3 or 6 months program, you can still refine your business model, your strategy. You probably still need to have some key hires in your team, be able to raise money um, and other things, maybe for traction. um, yeah.
Interesting. And so you are making these connections, you're working with a bunch of different health tech companies, and you're getting more familiar with the industry in general. And can you kind of speak on any major or common challenges that you see recurring in this industry?
Yeah, I think some are probably quite apparent to a lot of people. Like, the healthcare system seems to be fairly traditional. It's actually more of a sick care system than a healthcare system, because there's not a lot of preventative measures going in to keep you healthy. It's kind of more reactive than proactive, right? There's a lot of silos, I think. So if you go, um, different departments in a hospital might not talk to each other. Um, like technological systems, like softwares and hardware, might not be connected to each other. So it's a bit disjointed, and I think there's a lot of value to be unlocked in that. And then finally, I think there's a paradigm shift in terms of mindset that is needed for individuals to be in charge of their own health. And I think that's going to grow with wearables and being able to track your hydration levels and your even glucose levels and all types of biomarkers. Eventually, probably also things like your um, inflammation levels and things like that, that can really tell you, hey, you're at risk of something, maybe pre-diabetic, or maybe at risk of a heart attack. And I think that's really going to save a lot of costs to the healthcare system, but also put people in charge of their own health and be able to be proactive.
Interesting. So really just decreasing the illiteracy in the healthcare space, and also just immersing the actual patients in their own health by providing them, like you said, data from wearables and whatnot, but just getting them familiar with being able to track and know what their actual health is. Interesting. And so I kind of touched on it a little bit, but who would be your ideal target audience for companies that you'd want to work with in health tech?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more on the life sciences side, that anyone who works on genomics or microfluidics, or more on the biotech side, but ideally in software and a modular platform, meaning something that is um, you know, for example, in drug therapy, therapeutics, you oftentimes it's just one shot on goal, and if the drug doesn't work, then then the company fails. I think for us, it's more like a software platform. Like, it could be a diagnostic test that can test multiple things, and there's a lot of potential to pivot the company um, if the remaining validations of the technology are not working out the way that the company expects them to. And then in terms of digital healthcare, I think there are some developments that are interesting as well. Certain platforms, it could be a marketplace.
Interesting.
Yeah. Um, Mostly on the software side, but we've also done medical devices. So I hope that's a
Yeah.
sufficient answer there.
Yeah, that's interesting because, like, if you think about it, software is really, as an investor standpoint, would be easier to scale, right? Because it's not actual products that you have to create, manufacture, and ship out.
Yeah, I think so. As long as you have some partnerships that can, where the software can go into all of the hardware, that certain medical companies or pharma companies or any healthcare company is, that is entrenched, is providing, meaning all of the hardware already exists in the hospitals, for example, but this is a new software. So as long as you can be integrated,
Mm.
I think it's easily scalable.
Ah, interesting. And so we kind of talked about the whole relationship between your company and how you help health tech companies, and also just the process that they go just to get to you, and what you're looking for on your end to be able to provide value to these types of companies that you want to work with and that you want to invest in. But so what sort of advice can you give to any health tech company entrepreneur or business owner who is in this field and is looking to grow or looking to get more investment?
Yeah. I think the biggest one is probably surround yourself with really smart people. Um,
Good.
Someone once said that you're kind of the average of the five people you hang around most, in terms of financials and personality, character, all types of things. So I think that's the big one. Being I think being in an ecosystem or in kind of a place or a network that really um, is cares about education, personal development, and like entrepreneurship, all of those things. I think. Um, Otherwise, I would say to really get the essentials right, like to have a business plan, a bit, make sure your business model works. which is tricky, before you can really test it. Have a roadmap, meaning like a strategy of um, what you're going to do this year and next year and how that's going to evolve, and then all the way think it through to the very end, right? Like, how are you going to exit out of this, and maybe even what are you going to do after that? But I think it's a mix between the high level considerations um, and the details, like the unit economics, and is it scalable? At what level does it work? And all of those things.
Interesting. So yeah, this episode is just a little bit different from the past ones I've recorded because they're mainly just other health tech entrepreneurs and business owners and how they were able to grow their business and go about it. And so what I find really valuable in this specific episode, which will be very valuable to like the listeners in my audience, is that we're getting an insight from someone on the opposite end, someone who's actually investing their money into these companies to help them grow and what you are looking for, and kind of giving them the right advice on things that they should be thinking about and have in place before actually going and getting more investments to grow their company. So yeah, just want to thank you for that.
Yeah. And one thing I would add to it is the really the iterative process. The more feedback you get, the better. The more you hold yourself accountable. Like, even if you just write an email to yourself or to a few people, right, to get a little bits and pieces of feedback every week, or I think the faster you can iterate and the faster you can do this rapid prototype, rapid prototyping, I think the faster you can move, and the less money you're going to spend, and I think it's going to just flow better.
Gotcha. Interesting. So yeah, we're kind of reaching towards the end of the podcast. We've talked about a lot of pretty high level strategies and stuff, and just the process and that relationship between an investor, accelerators, and actual health tech companies. But I kind of want to end the interview on a little more lighter exercise. I call it rapid fire round. So I'm gonna ask you a couple questions, and you just give me whatever answer that you come up with.
Sounds good.
All right. Question number one. What is your favorite book of all time?
Really hard question, but the first one that comes to mind is 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, just because it's very applicable to venture capital, what we're doing, and also I would say entrepreneurs could probably learn a lot as well.
Got you. And then what is one goal that you want to accomplish this year?
Finish the fund, and maybe start raising, either extend it or start raising external capital. We as investors sometimes raise money too, so we actually have to get ourselves in the shoes of startups in some ways, and see what is our differentiation and all of that stuff. So I think to kind of keep going what we started, and to finish that in a really clean way.
Awesome. And who is the most influential person in your life or career?
That one goes to my mom.
Shout out to mom.
Yeah, she's always been there. And outside, tough to say. It's probably some entrepreneur.
Someone that you came across, consume their content. Last one.
Like a founding father or something like that.
Got you. What is one piece of advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
I think I would do a lot of research on how the world is changing, and what kind of skills are needed, and how that matches up with what I like to do. Maybe to do something that allows you to contribute in your own unique way to one of the bigger problems that is that is, you think will be solved during your lifetime, that you can kind of prepare early for, but it's deep enough, but also it's broad enough to be able to pivot and do something else. I think a good balance of that.
Awesome. Well, I think that is the perfect way to end today's podcast. Just want to say thank you again for jumping on and just sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom, and what you're doing in the industry. So for people who are interested, how can they learn more about your fund, learn more about you, and what else you're doing?
Yeah, they can find us on neuefund.com, neuyefund.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn, Maximilian Winter, um, and you can also they can probably find me through you as well.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I'll put some links down below. With that being said, that ends today's episode. Thanks again, Max.
Thank you.